Welcome to the Fraudcast, everyone. Welcome back to the familiar faces that I'm seeing. My name is Jenna Rivera. For those of you who have not joined us before, I'm on the marketing team here, but I'm just kind of helping to facilitate and grow the community of folks that we have here. For those of you who have not attended a Fraudcast session before, I'm going to give a brief overview just to kind of root us in what we're all doing here, what are the conversations like, and what you could expect, kind of how this session is going to go and what you can expect to get out of this session. The Fraudcast is just an open space for e-commerce fraud and risk professionals to come together and talk about the latest fraud trends that you're seeing and what you're tackling in your day-to-days. This is a really great place to hear from and connect with other fraud and risk leaders in the e-commerce space and crowdsource some advice or ideas and get some pointers on what you're experiencing in your day-to-day to help you get through whatever challenges you might be facing. Week over week, we have a really great group of folks that join us on the calls, lots of people to learn from and connect with. So if you haven't already introduced yourself, please do. And connect with one another. This is not a typical webinar session. You'll notice it's definitely not just a trends readout. It's intended to be a conversation where people can come together and, voice what they're hearing and ask questions and seek advice. We have really great conversations in these sessions week over week, but the really great conversations only happen when people are participating with us. So if you're able to, please come on camera. It's always nice to see familiar faces and new ones. And if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to come off mute and voice whatever you would like, any observations, comments, or questions. And then too, there are a few other ways that you could participate during the session too. Of course, you can go ahead and throw any questions or comments that you have in the chat. If you prefer, for whatever reason, for a question to remain anonymous, there is an option to do that. If you go to your Zoom menu at the bottom, there is a Q&A function that you can use to submit questions anonymously, and then we'll make sure to monitor that for any questions that might come through. So every week, Vito is going to start us off with a little food for thought. This week, we're kind of focusing on a request from last week, which is kind of nice. We're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on chargebacks, and we do have a special guest here from our team to help us out with that. But really, any topic is fair game during these sessions. So if you're coming into these sessions with something that's top of mind, feel free to throw that in the chat or come off mute, and we'll try to integrate that into the conversation. With that being said, I'm going to kick things off to your host, Vito.
What is up, everybody? It's so good to see y'all. In fact, your pictures are even smaller today because we have so many people here, which gets me so excited. And I'm so excited to introduce our guest for you today. Obviously, the request from last week was, how do we fight these darn chargebacks? How do we win it? What are we doing? Help me out. Matt, I'm paraphrasing very loosely. I think you said it much more eloquently than that. But it's my pleasure to introduce you to Augie Merriweather from the Chargeback team here at Signified. A little welcome from y'all will be great to introduce Augie. Augie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I hope everybody is doing great. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys here today.
Awesome. Well, just a little fair warning for everybody. Augie's out in East Texas and I'm in West Texas. So we are at peak Texas capacity here today. So just buckle up and get ready.
Bring my hat.
Yeah. Well, Augie, something I think everyone here can sympathize with. I think about the Talking Heads song when they said, "How did I get here?" Right? All of us found very circuitous paths to the roles that we're in. I don't think any of us went to school for fraud fighting. But, can you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you're at and, what led you here and what keeps you around?
Yeah, for sure. I can do that. And then, just dive right into the discussion. But before I even do that, just want to thank you, Vito, and thank you, Jennifer, even, inviting me to this session. I really do appreciate it. A little bit about myself. I've been in the e-commerce payment space for about 10 years now. I originally started in fraud prevention for an online gift card retailer before joining Signify. Right now, I focus on internal process improvements and enhancement within our chargeback and dispute management space. And yeah, that's kind of how I got here. Like Vito said, if I look back, right, I was working for this online gift card retailer. I was actually doing customer service there. And they said, "Hey, I like the way this guy works." The head guy at risk is like, "Hey, I like the way you work, man. Come over here and join our risk team." I was trying to get a job in marketing. I was, "Hey, I'm going to work my way up from the bottom and at this new startup and see where it happens." I flash back now. Here I am, 10 years later. I'm still in the space. I would imagine for a lot of you guys, it's probably a similar kind of trajectory where you kind of just fell into the fraud space, but I love it. I wouldn't change a thing of how that happened. In regards to chargebacks, I get it, right? They're frustrating. Even the most prepared merchants, sometimes they struggle with them. What I hope to do here today is share some of what I think are the best practices that could possibly improve your win rates when disputing chargebacks. I would say, some of these strategies you might already be doing. If so, that's great. If you aren't, that's okay too. I realize that every business is different, right? What may work for one business may not work for the next. You guys sell different products, you have different customer bases. And so I would say the real goal for today is for you guys to possibly walk out of here with some new ideas that you can incorporate into your chargeback workflows, or you get validation that you're doing all the right things. Hey, I did X, Y, and Z, everything listed here, and I'm on the right path. So that's how I'm coming in to today with.
Love
So
it.
does it sound good for everybody?
I think so. I mean, I'm speaking for the group here, and I'm also going to speak for Augie and myself personally, where we've got very thick skin. It's not just because we're Texans here, but we deal with a lot of stuff all day. So if you've got any questions, feel free to come off mute. Even if you're stepping over words, we can take it. And we've got our bulletproof vests on too. So if you feel like there's holes to shoot in the things that we bring up, fair game. So with that being said, Augie, lead us into some kind of top tips. That would be great. And again, group, if there's anything that Augie brings up that you want to double click on, dive into, contest, affirm, fair game. So Augie, the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. If there's something that I can't answer, I have no problem taking that offline and kind of delving deep into that for you, and maybe shooting Vito with the answer, if it's something that's more complex. But and this is going to be really kind of high level. I know some of you guys may already know this stuff, but before I even jump into the best practices and things of that nature, I kind of just want to touch on the chargeback landscape as a whole, right? Not all chargebacks are created equal. Every network, your Visas, MasterCard, Amex, PayPal, they all have different rules. They have different reason codes. They have different evidence requirements, different, response deadlines. For example, I think most networks are giving you 20 days to respond, but MasterCard gives you 45. So all these little variations can cause confusion. And I would even go to say that, some chargebacks is, they're unwinnable just due to some of the consumer protections that are out there, where the issuers are prioritizing their customer over the merchant. Prime example, I have a Chase Sapphire card. And I know if I dispute that charge, Chase is more than likely going to refund me than go down a rabbit hole of doing a full investigation, because they're more interested in keeping me as their customer as their main priority. So I say that to say that, when it comes to chargeback outcomes, they're inconsistent. So you can submit the perfect documentation and still lose. I go back to Matt last week on the call. I went and watched the video. And Matt said, "I'm doing everything. I'm submitting everything. Everything is perfect." And, I'm still seeing these losses. And so, yeah, I feel like there's, sometimes it's no rhyme or reason. Sometimes you're at the mercy of the issuer. Sometimes maybe it's the merchant's reputation that's flown around online. Sometimes maybe it's the card works the card network's internal policies that are influencing their decision. So I would say, don't be too hard on yourself if you feel like you're doing everything right and you're still getting unfavorable results. I think that's just the name of the game, unfortunately. And so you might be wondering, what are some common reasons, though, that merchants will lose chargebacks? What are the common themes, though, when we're struggling to win disputes? Number one, I would say, is maybe the evidence isn't compelling enough or the evidence is irrelevant. Does that evidence actually address the reason for the chargeback, right? Maybe it's missed deadlines. We already know that these chargebacks have strict response windows. So if we miss that response window, that's automatic loss. There's no coming back from that. Number three, I would say, is there a structured dispute process in place? Is there consistency? Is there a dedicated person or team managing your chargebacks? If not, and let's say you're getting a lot of volume, that might be a good use case for advocating for a dedicated chargeback person on your team. Or you could call Signified. Shameless plug. So those are the three main things that come to mind for me when it's like, hey, what are some factors that can attribute to the losses? So if we're going to jump into right now, I know the main question was, what are the best practices for winning chargebacks? And I'm even going to loop in practices for preventing them. Number one, I'm going to say, is submit strong targeted evidence. Aligning your evidence to the chargeback reason code. If you got, let's say, an unauthorized transaction, a fraud transaction, well, let's supply them with the AVS CVV match information. Let's give them the login history, device fingerprinting info. Maybe it's the order history. Let's say it's a friendly fraud case, right? And this person's saying they didn't make the purchase for this Chick-fil-A gift card. And you go and look in your OMS system and you look at their order history, and for the past 12 months, you see nothing but Chick-fil-A gift cards. Well, let's send that provide that order information in there to support your case. Maybe it's product not received. Well, let's give them the delivery confirmation with the tracking details, carrier proof of delivery, any kind of customer communication confirming those receipts too. I think will work out a lot. If you have Zendesk or Salesforce, chats or logs. In instances where you have maybe defective or item not as described, maybe we can send screenshots of the product listing, return or refund policies, any kind of evidence showing the product was used before the dispute. I think all these things are critical to include if you have them at your disposal, if you have that information that you can provide. The second thing I would say is more so of just being efficient, maybe optimizing your workflows, maybe leveraging automation where you can. Can you streamline how chargebacks are being handled? Maybe you're automating the dispute submission when possible. Maybe you're pre-filling templates with the required evidence to save time. Can you set up alerts? Maybe you're getting like Slack alerts or email. There's tools like Zapier, maybe you guys have used before, where you can set up those direct automations whenever you get a chargeback. So hey, I've got a chargeback today, let's jump on it. I got an alert for it. Other things I think are valuable could be just even the process reports that you can download from the portals. Or if you have internal dashboards, you can do some analysis on win-loss trends. I say that too because if you're pulling chargebacks maybe for the past couple of months, and you see a trend where, hey, I'm winning these certain types of chargebacks and I'm losing these other kinds. There's a pattern here. And maybe you're only devoting your time to those cohort of chargebacks where you say, hey, I'm winning these. Let me focus my time on these. I'm not going to worry about the other ones that I'm putting in time fighting everything and losing those. Let me focus on the ones I'm winning. So I think that's a good one too. And then I would say, can you standardize any internal processes that you may have? Maybe it's creating playbooks, so every dispute response is formatted properly. Maybe it includes all necessary documentation that you would need for you and your team. So it's more so like working smarter, not harder, and being efficient about it. And the third thing that I would say, and this is again more of a preventative action, And this is also something where we consult merchants. We'll have them take a look at their policies that they have. Can you strengthen your policies to reduce chargebacks? Do you have clear terms of service and refund policies? Things like making sure your refund windows, your return conditions, maybe digital good policies, that they're well documented and visible to your customers on all your sites and platforms that you have. And then the customer support aspect, I would say too. Can you engage with your customers before it turns into a dispute? Maybe you have, verifier ethical alerts, things of that nature, where you can refund or resolve some of these disputes before they even escalate to a chargeback. I go back to my job with the gift card retailer, and I believe we had some kind of disputes notification in place, but we were getting on the phone and calling those customers saying, hey, I saw you filed a dispute. Do me a favor. Think about us in our business. You've been a loyal customer for us for years. Filing a dispute hurts us as a business. It hurts our reputation. I know you're unhappy, but how about we go ahead, we take care of this refund for you, right? We'll refund you today. Do me a favor and call the bank and drop the dispute. And we had a very good success rate with that, as far as customers saying, you know what, I was antsy. I didn't know what to do. I just went straight to my credit card. But me picking up the phone and giving them a call is what changed their mindset to say, you know what, this is a good company. They usually do right by me. Let me go ahead and do them a solid, drop the chargeback, and they get their refund and everyone's happy and we can go home. And at that same time, you're also educating the customer to say, hey, before you go straight to the issuer to your bank, contact me as a merchant. Contact me first and let me take care of it. So that's obviously, it depends on your setup too, right? I'm not saying everyone can do that, but just wanted to throw that out there.
A wealth of fantastic information, Augie. And
Yeah.
the last point is something that sticks with me in this world of automation, which is very useful and makes these processes more streamlined. It seems easier nowadays than ever to pick up the phone and not call the merchant, but to go onto my banking app and just file that dispute. So kind of bolstering the human touch, the humanity of our businesses might yield to some good results as far as chargeback disputes go. There are so many questions. I know my almonds are activated here. I think a lot of people got their almonds activated by everything you just said. I want to hit one in the chat, and then I really want to let the floodgates go wide open here. And that comes from Alex. Alex asks, Augie, is there a tool or process you can recommend that would help us validate that, quote, John Smith, who placed the order on our website, is the same person on the card that they use for payment? Oftentimes, we aren't receiving any information about who the true cardholder is when we receive a chargeback and have to fight it based on the fact that we delivered the product ordered. Any tool that you can kind of suggest there?
I'm not sure that I have a specific tool that will help off top of my head right now. But what I will say is that a lot of times, just being that investigator and just doing some research on transactions to find out, get on social media, Facebook, or Instagram, just, I would say, unconventional methods of investigation to kind of prove cases. I know that that's something that, I've done in the past, where they're filing a chargeback, they're saying they didn't receive it. I haven't received my Rolex watch. You type in their name, right? You find somebody in their location, geolocation, you look at the first picture on their page, and there they are flexing their Rolex watch that they're saying they never got them. There's been multiple stories that I know of that way. So I would say I don't know a specific tool right now to kind of identify it, but just putting your investigator hat on. I know, Vito, you can attest to that, right? Of just going down a rabbit hole and trying to figure out who this person is, their traits, and getting them that way.
Augie hit the nail on the head, because one thing that criminals love to do is flaunt. And the Rolex story is a great one. Also, there was one with a pool that someone said that they didn't get, and this was like a huge, pool to be installed in the place. And then we go on social media and there they are, splish splash and away. So, Paula, I saw you said Visa account name inquiry. I think Paula and Augie really have a shared history with, Paula, I'm always picking on you. And, I appreciate your background with gift card fraud so much. So yeah, Paula's got a good suggestion in the chat as well. Matt, I see you're off mute, and this is kind of this is your day. So Matt's got an interesting use case with subscriptions. Matt, I'm sure you got a couple of questions for Augie.
Yeah, for sure. And this one's kind of a little bit random, but I'm curious if you have any insight or knowledge into kind of behind the curtain, right? Because the way I picture this is you have somebody sitting at a desk at the credit card company who is, reviewing hundreds of these a day, essentially spending 30 seconds on everyone they decide on, and boom, they're making a decision. And so if that is truly the case, and I'd love to know if it is, number one, I would love to just find one of those people to talk to them, because they would truly give us some great insight. But thinking that that's going to be impossible, it makes me also try to think what evidence I need to present that's easily accessible, right? I mean, like you mentioned it, you got to have the appropriate evidence. If you flood them with evidence, I don't think they're going to get to it. If you make it hard to, if you make it hard to access, they're not going to get to it. So to me, you need something that's hard hitting, right in front of their face, makes a quick point, and they can, like you said, go against the grain and go for the merchant instead of going for their customer, which is absolutely, it feels like my first loyalty is to them every time. And that's I think where there were those of us who sit on the other side of that table get so frustrated, because we recognize that that person is taking advantage of the situation.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it right on the head there. On both points, I would say if you can find, I feel like there's secretive group, Matt. That question I feel is every merchant's trying to figure out is how does it work on the other side? I still to this day, I don't know.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, it's like they keep the secrets guarded. But if you can find, maybe scour LinkedIn, and maybe you can find and cozy up to someone over at Visa or any of these card issuer or networks, and make good with them, and chat with them. Maybe they'll divulge some secrets, and if so, definitely come back and let us know.
Yeah.
But so that would be my advice for that is, maybe building relationships, maybe merchants, we can be building relationships with some of these card issuer and networks to kind of gain that knowledge, because I personally don't know what's the secret sauce there. And then secondly, you made another point about I lost it.
Just the rapidity with which they're making their decisions leads me to believe you need to just have basic, quick, impactful information to make them make a decision. The problem is I don't really know what that information is, because every time I submit something, I lose. So I'm trying to learn that part of it. But
Matt, I would go back to, I agree with you. Yes, they want it kind of straight to the point, not excessive information, but the right information. And so maybe it could be helpful as far as, again, aligning the evidence to the reason codes. And maybe you make a template saying, hey, for this type of chargeback, I'm supplying X, Y, and Z for that type. You have a template and you're plugging in that information, so hey, I'm putting my best foot forward there. And that could be maybe an easier way versus a one size fits all. We're just throwing and supplying evidence.
And real quick, there's a lot of other questions, and I want to let other people speak. But you mentioned that we're a subscription service, and what we find to be the most frustrating for us is we 40% of our disputes are about canceled. And in most of those scenarios, the person submits their cancellation request after the payment that they made for that monthly subscription. So in our eyes, great, we will for sure cancel anything going forward, but you canceled after your monthly subscription was due, so we think you should pay that. And yet we lose 90% of those frauds. So of those disputes. So that's where it just becomes the point where you're like, I don't know what else to tell you. This is so clear cut in our eyes, and yet we tend to lose those. So again, I'm just, crying over spilt milk here, but it is frustrating for sure.
Real quick, I know we have another question, but Matt, I want to touch on that. Just thinking out loud, could you possibly change a policy to say, hey, if you cancel before, I'm not sure whenever the dispute comes, you will be required to pay, the remainder, and you cannot file a dispute. The dispute will be invalid. just
Yeah.
something I thought
Yeah,
maybe
I think,
possible.
you raise a good point. Jessica raises a good point. We need to improve our cancellation policy and make it really at the forefront for people to see. Because I think that will help our chances. So all those are good points. I think that would be a good first step. So appreciate it. Yeah, okay.
Well,
I've
if
had my piece here. Let's move on to somebody
Matt,
else.
we're going to keep coming back to it because Shelly's on deck here, and Shelly's calling from Peloton. And Shelly, I think you might have some subscription issues as well, if I can take a guess.
Yeah, over 50% of my disputes that I get a month are subscription based. Most of them are in the platform of not canceled, but they like to change it up and dispute like 7 months worth of subscriptions all at
Yes.
once. That's my favorite.
Mm.
I'm sorry that your bike became a clothes hanger, but that's a you problem, not a me problem. So what we've started doing at the request of actually Stripe, who is our payment processor and helping us deal with a lot of it, is basically assuming the person on the other end knows zero about your company.
Mm.
And so first we tell them who we are and what we do, and then we show them how the person used the subscription, and then include our subscription cancellation policy showing we don't prorate based on when you cancel. And then the next thing we actually did is took screenshots of how to cancel your subscription, proving that they didn't do it and they had the tools in their hands. I literally went through my app and took screenshots of how to cancel it and then found it online where we showed it. It's like 3 pages of here, we made it idiot proof. And they didn't do it. So we've been doing a lot of that. We've actually seen a lot of increase. Also, we started being proactive. And if you dispute your subscription, we will remove your method of payment. And so next time when you want to reactivate your subscription because you want to get back on your bike, it'll tell you that you need to add a payment method. And now I have even more evidence the next time they dispute it that says, no, they went in and it re-added it and they still didn't cancel it. So it's just kind of adding those layers on. We get a lot of repeat the people who are disputing month over month or every third month because they feel guilty in July, but they don't feel guilty in August. So we get a lot of those.
Wow.
Shelly, you're my hero. That was awesome.
Yeah, fire trucks are just
Yeah, that was
flying.
super helpful. Thank you very much. That was great. That was really, I think
Yeah.
that's I never thought of just pretending that the other person just has no idea what's going on, which is probably makes
Yeah.
sense.
The suggestion really came from the fact that Peloton is not in a lot of markets. Everybody knows our brand, but all of these people responding to the reading over the documents, they're in offshore offices. We're not in their market. They have no idea what we are, what we do.
Yeah.
So if you don't tell them, then you're not giving them the tools to make the right decision. They could have still had a really horrible day and decide to go against you because they're not feeling good. But it's at least we've seen about a 60% increase in success rate year over year, just by making those little things and taking assumption off the plate.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Great information. Yeah, treating them like they don't know anything about your business. That is great information. I rode my Peloton this morning, Shelly. Just thought I'd tell you. I will also think twice if I decide to cancel my subscription and think about filing a chargeback, since you guys have that under control.
Lockdown. Now, Shelly, Matt, we've got subscriptions kind of really targeted here. We've got a question from Justin. Justin, let it rip.
I don't know if it's so much of a question. I don't really have any answers either, but I could just kind of share a couple experiences. So we have started to incorporate a subscription model, but mainly it's just physical goods, right? It's bed linens, it's loungewear. And I don't know how much this helps or not, but like we were talking about with Matt earlier, I think a huge thing is trying to do all that homework ahead of time, like Augie was mentioning, and then we try as much as we can to get on the phone with the customer. And just, most of the time there's some type of misunderstanding. There's, I accidentally, I didn't want this, or you guys sent me the order twice, and well, they really ordered it twice, and stuff like that, where we realize, gosh, if we could have just connected with the customer before this, we could have avoided this. But there are those cases too where it's sometimes you can't get a hold of the customer by phone, right? We'll try to call them up, we'll try to email them, and then if we can't get a response, we will use that in our evidence. We'll say, hey, we've reached out to this customer, we've attempted to quote unquote make things right. In our policy right now, we have something where we will, if someone says something was missing and wasn't delivered, we'll reship it, but you can't all of a sudden decide you want to return that or exchange it or whatever. There's certain restrictions on reshipped goods. But the other thing that I ran into that was really frustrating once upon a time was early 2023. We were running into a lot of return fraud, right? Where people would manipulate a return shipping label and slap it on a mailer with some dice in it or some trash or whatever. And those were getting disputed. And in some cases, the actual mailers would reroute to our headquarters and we would get the physical copies with the carrier putting the actual real tracking number on it. And it was so frustrating because we would submit this stuff and photos, and in certain cases, the order was supposed to go to Tucson, but somehow the return was dropped off in Miami. And you would think that would be a slam dunk. And we still lost some of those. And those were incredibly frustrating. So I don't really have any answers, but we're trying as best we can to, once again, Augie mentioned this too. We've employed the method of like, hey, before we call this person, let's, do that. What's their order history? Can we find them on LinkedIn? Do they look like a normal person with an actual job, or do they look kind of shady with, the blank head and, does it look like some college student at some community college or some JC? Like those are some telling things, but otherwise I don't really have any answers. We're just trying to fight the good fight too.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you can do, Justin. That seems like a tough situation. I don't really have any kind of answers for that at the moment, but certainly empathize with you, man. That's tough.
I got to keep going back to Shelley's point here because that really blew my mind. We take so much for granted, we take so much for common knowledge, not only mentioned about what our business does, but really explicating the fact that, hey, on this page, AKA my freaking homepage, it says this, and here's exactly what, as simplified as possible, which you've probably gone down that route already, Justin, but I would even challenge you to think like you're speaking to a fourth grader in so many ways. And for those who are listening in post-production who are actually on the front lines for these card brands, we're not calling you fourth graders, but we're trying to make your life a little easier. You brought up contacting customers, Justin. Kristen's got a Kristen's got a great question that's also in regards to contacting customers. Does anyone regularly reach out to cardholders who dispute transactions to try to reduce friendly fraud? I like this a lot because it's a little bit like, I gotcha. Hey, I see what you're doing. And remind them of the refund policy and who to contact if they have an order issue in the future. If so, has it worked to prevent future disputes or increase win rate? For those of you in the audience today, I'd love to hear your success stories and your horror stories about trying to, bridge the gap between here's what we do and here's what you're doing, and I don't like what you're doing. Anyone have any success or horror stories around that kind of approach?
I have reached out to cardholders before. Typically, they'll file a dispute typically with our payments and how they process within our system. They get charged per the shipment that gets sent out. So if they order 10 of an item, they might get broken down, but then they'll say it's no authorization or fraud, but then they'll replace an order a couple weeks later. So with those type of customers, I do reach out, make sure I just explain the process of how payments are charged, try to find out where it came from. And one thing I've noticed is sometimes it's the banks reaching out directly to the customer. So a lot of the times they'll call the customer, say, hey, did you do this transaction? Customer's like, oh, only placed one order, but then they see 5 charges, so they automatically mark them as fraud. So I think partly reaching out to customers to make sure they're understanding the policy is key. Usually in those situations, we've already disputed the chargeback and typically have lost or won or whatever the outcome is. So it doesn't really help with preventing or like trying to win those, but it does help with those customers' retention and them knowing that we are paying attention and we want them to understand. The other thing I would also recommend is if you do lose a chargeback, go back and read the reason why. Reading the reasoning or even reaching out to whoever you fight it with, like if it is directly with Visa or American Express, or if it's with your payment processor, reaching out to them and say, hey, I see that we lost this chargeback. Why? And then they will give you the specific reasons on what is needed to be able to win those in the future.
Fantastic stuff there, Jessica. And Illy raises a very similar point to all of this. And Illy, I don't know if you wanted to discuss a little bit, but Illy asked, does anyone have experience specifically with policies requiring merchant contact before issue contact? This is really in line with everything else. And my gut, and I'm not the chargeback expert, Augie is, my gut is if our whole website's in 14-point font, we want that in 22-point bold Comic Sans with the dancing little, stars around it. Like, here it is. Don't miss this. But Illy, you have any further color around that question or anything else, given what everyone's been asking?
Yeah, sure. And by the way, first of all, thank you for having this call. Started joining last week, and you guys so totally rock. Everyone here, it's fantastic that this exists. And Paula, thanks for inviting me. So yeah, this is about issuers really want to do the right thing in general, but they don't know what is the right thing, so they have to work with the customer. So it's just about is it more around having better policies, and if so, part of the answer here is about having that dialogue with the customer, and the issuer does have that dialogue, as you guys stated. The merchant doesn't always have that dialogue. So if you were to place in your policies that you have to have the dialogue in order for a dispute to be processed or even have a chance at winning, is that strong, right? I don't know if you guys have seen if that matters, because if you can't have that dialogue, you can't turn it into a refund instead, or you can convince them to keep the product. I don't know, depending on what the reason is. So I haven't seen that. If I'm just saying, if you've had experience specifically with a policy that says the customer must contact the merchant first.
Anyone with any color there, and I might call out some people. We have several folks on the call from Wayfair. We have Grace Duncan and Vicky on the call from Wayfair. I'm wondering if you have any color there, because I know that that's something you're definitely working with. I wonder if you could chime in at all.
Sure. Hi. Nice to meet everybody. So primarily we have a fraud department and a scam department. We wouldn't be the best points of contact for fraud related disputes. We more joined to learn a little bit about non-fraud related disputes. And then we also work a lot with like recharging cards. But that doesn't seem to be the total focus of today's discussion. But we sometimes use the names for these things interchangeably.
Great. So, I mean, non-fraud disputes. Augie, in regards to a SNAD, INR significantly not as ascribed, item not received, I think we talked a lot about documentation, and perhaps the real challenge would be the integration of warehouse data or what's really picked up at the loading dock back to the command center to say, hey, here's a picture, here's the scale, here's the weight of this thing that came in. It is not the same as what we put out. Do you have any sort of best practices there, Augie, regarding non-fraud chargeback reasons?
Yeah, I mean, non-fraud chargeback reasons, like you pointed out, Vito, any kind of photo evidence, if you check your OMS, your fulfillment, providing that documentation for the issuer, I think is key. Any kind of receipts that you have, any kind of email confirmation saying that, hey, they got it. I think I said in the earlier piece, they're saying it's not described. What do you have as a merchant? I would say, what do you have at your disposal to use to support that chargeback, and really just supplying those things for that specific chargeback reason.
We've entered the witching hour here, so we were in like complete speed run here. Ben's got his hand raised. Ben, I'm jumping to you.
Something that's helped us out, especially with friendly fraud, is We know these credit card and companies, they have probably minutes to review each of these chargebacks. So with us is what's helped us a lot is just what we're sending them. So sending them the whole entire terms and conditions, just sending the one sentence that will get their attention and just sending them blurbs of it, and then include the PDFs if they actually want it. But we'll just send them just the first page is the highlights of all the ones that defend our points. And then that usually we've seen an increase of the ones we've been winning, because especially with subscriptions, like we all know everybody's checked the box. I read the terms and conditions, but the thing is nobody does it. But if we can make the point to the credit card company saying, hey, here's our points, they agreed to it. Here's the rest of the terms and conditions. You want to read the rest of our policies, but the main points that defend us is they did agree to these, and we've been winning a higher percentage of that.
Occam's razor in action. Simplify, simplify, simplify. I love it. This is a conversation that can go on for hours. And unfortunately, we have a minute left. You know, Shelly, I think everyone had a gold star moment here, but Shelly, I think, had the goldest of gold stars. And Shelly, I think you have a question about Apple ID and private relay. And I would love to use our next session to talk about that. It's funny, for a raise of hands, anyone going to MRC, because I'm going to MRC and I have a talk at MRC, and I'm talking about the rise of VPNs, the rise of Apple ID private relay. So Shelly, I'm wondering what kind of questions you've got that we could perhaps touch on next week. I'd love to go down that rabbit hole with y'all.
So the biggest issue that we're having right now is user incapability, I guess is the best way. They sign up for the Peloton app and program, and then they use a Apple device to sign in again, not realizing they have this private relay set up. And instead of connecting to their email that they had originated with, it now creates this. We are in a downfall because powers that be decided my unique identifier should be an email. Feedback has been given, but there's nothing I can do to fix that. So how am I not getting this? I'll have people call in with 13 months of subscriptions that they didn't realize, or double subscriptions. They're like, I was being charged twice and it's all through my Apple Pay and I didn't get it.
Ouch.
Like,
yeah, I think
legitimate concerns, and some people don't even call us to do it. They just dispute it, and we have to go in and refund and accept.
it is high time that we let the powers that be know about the rise and all of this. Next week, we're going to touch on that rise, in addition to what we can take actionably back to our superiors and say, hey, look, this is the way the market is going. I'm going to share with y'all a story about my father, who is a plumber who works underground, and he couldn't program a VCR, but now he's got NordVPN and he's doing all that fun stuff. So your average Joe, your lunch pail guy, is more privacy conscious than ever. And that will be the tenor of our next conversation. I'm so glad to have met with y'all today. This was a blast. Feel free to reach out to me, Augie, any of us directly. And I really just hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And thank you so much for what you do every week. This would be absolute chicken feed without you guys. So I look forward to seeing y'all soon, and hope you're staying warm, because it's -3 degrees here in West Texas.
Thanks, everyone.
Until next time, my friends.
Thanks a lot, Vito and Augie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. See you.